News First, Newsline.
Hello there, a very good evening and welcome to another edition of Newsline. We've been speaking a lot about law, democracy, fundamental rights. These topics came to the fore, especially during the past few years, with people beginning to value their fundamental rights because their fundamental rights were deprived to a certain degree. And as the old saying goes, when you have something, you don't really feel the value of it. People had access to fundamental rights for quite a long time. And when these rights started to slip away from them, they started understanding the value of these fundamental rights. However, today we are in Sri Lanka without elections being held. Elections have been postponed indefinitely. There are several pieces of legislation where many legal experts have dubbed them as draconian, that are being gazetted, that are being expected to be tabled in Parliament. To discuss these matters and to especially educate the general public on how they can use the law to protect themselves, we've got with us none other than the President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, Attorney at Law Kaushalya Nawaratne. A very good evening, sir, and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Sharon. Thank you very much for your invitation.
Sir, first things first, for Sri Lanka to function as a state, there are three main arms of the state, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Now, it's very important that these three arms maintain a certain separation, that they keep each other in check and balance. If one arm is trying to strong-arm any of the other arms of state or the divisions of state, that would create instability in Sri Lanka. And we know among the three state arms, the people have the most amount of trust in the judiciary of Sri Lanka because for more than once, the judiciary has come out and protected the fundamental rights of the general public. So in comparison to the other two arms, the judiciary has much more public faith right now in Sri Lanka. However, the judiciary is under threat by the executive and the legislature. Certain statements were being made, and it was alarming to see parliamentarians, people who have sworn to protect the constitution, making these unruly statements, referring to judges and justices by their name, influencing their decisions, influencing their chain of thought about matters that are being heard before various courts of law in Sri Lanka. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Bar Association did have a discussion with the Speaker of the Parliament regarding this dire situation. What were the results that this discussion reaped?
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. I think you nailed the point. Because any democratic society, these three pillars, as you correctly pointed out, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, must work harmoniously. No arm, because it's any democratic governance to maintain the democracy. And these three arms are the most important, the pillars in that governance. But however, very unfortunately, the Sri Lankan, the members of the parliament especially and the executive has made certain statements. And we were of the opinion that these, the statements, the manner in which they try to undermine the importance of the judiciary. And when you attack the credibility of the judicial officers, certainly that will have dire consequences. So that was one of the reasons as to why the Bar Association, we decided to, without resorting to other methods which we have, and we wanted to make representations to the head of the parliament, who's the Speaker. So we went and met him. We made representations both in writing and orally. And at the discussions, we clearly pointed out and displayed and placed our unhappiness and our disagreement and the displeasure to the conduct of several the members of parliament and the manner in which the judiciary was being attacked by the members of parliament. Of course, especially with regard to matters, as you correctly said, matters which are sub judice, the matters which are pending in courts. And actually, if I may explain it a little bit with your permission, if the parliament, because if you look at the composition and the manner in which these powers have been identified and set out in the constitution, in the articles of the constitution, one can be heard to say that the judicial powers vested with the parliament are now being, or other people, are being exercised by the parliament through the courts. That is how it is worded in a plain and simple jargon. But however, there are checks and balances, as you correctly said, and no one should try to kind of override the other or to suppress the other, because other than the executive and the more than the executive and the parliament, the most important arm of the democratic governance is the judiciary. If you bring down the judiciary, if you try to suppress the judiciary, the rule of law cannot exist. So that's why we thought it would be more appropriate, more prudent, we as professionals to maintain, unlike some of those members in the parliament, we must maintain as professionals our professionalism. We thought it would be more appropriate for us to go and make our representation to the speaker. And the speaker, he appreciated what we said. And that perhaps may be the reason as to why yesterday from the chair he made a statement. And on top of that, and when it comes to the parliament can take certain decisions with regard to the judicial matters, but not the matters which are pending in courts. But then of course there's a procedure that are set out in the parliamentary procedures and the rules and regulations, and they never comply with those. And as and when we would have seen since of late, the parliament, the will of the parliament is being used to vandalize and then to basically assassinate the characters of another, to discuss their personal matters, to discuss their personal opinions, but not to protect the democratic arms or rather even to look after the best interests of the people. They have forgotten the reasons as to why they have been elected by the people whilst exercising their franchise. So therefore, now it's being discussed by the Bar Association, and we have consulted certain seniors who are experts in the relevant field, to see in case if we have not followed the parliament, the rules and the regular but is applicable in taking up certain matters, whether they are entitled for parliamentary immunity and the parliamentary privileges. It is our opinion, you go and say something without following the proper procedure, then of course you are not entitled to take the cover and then to make these statements. If so, certainly we will see what we are going to do, and certainly we will take up certain matters before court.
Because like you quite rightly pointed out, sir, there have been many defamatory statements that are being made in Parliament. However, no one can really institute any action, and there are those in Parliament, albeit a very few, who use this as a tool to defame people out in the open, including judicial officers, as you quite rightly mentioned. Sir, also speaking about the rule of law in Sri Lanka, since, of course, you're the president of the Bar Association and not from a state institution as such, a law enforcement agency, I don't know how well you could respond to this question, but we've seen a massive rise in the number of crimes here in Sri Lanka, especially the most heinous of all crimes, which is murder. It's happening at quite an alarming rate. We see school shootings happening in the United States, but of course, there it is a massive phenomenon because weapons and guns are legal, as in people have a fundamental right to bear arms. But here in Sri Lanka, we don't have a fundamental right, or any right to that matter, to bear arms. There are a very limited number of weapons in supply. However, in proportion to the number of weapons that are seemingly or that should be in circulation among the general public, the number of shootings, killings that are taking place is extremely high. One of the most recent incidents was a man who was given bail by the Maligakanda Magistrates Court when he was walking out with his 6-year-old daughter, was shot at while they were in the three-wheeler, and unfortunately, this 6-year-old girl lost her life. So, with the breakdown in the governance system of Sri Lanka and this rise in crime, is there a correlation there?
Yeah, so obviously, if you are if the members of the parliament is taking up this kind of a issue, and when you try to undermine the authority of the law enforcement authority, especially the court system, obviously general public or the people who are more prone towards committing a crime, they will take this without thinking
Matters
twice,
into their own hands,
and they will try to take the law into their hands. This is exactly what's happening, and that is one of the reasons as to why, Shalan, few weeks ago, Bar Association issued a very strong statement demanding the arms of the government, the stakeholders, to take stern action to curb down violence and the custodial deaths. That is also another big issue in our country. They would have seen the number of interviews and the steps that are being taken. No sooner a person is taken into his custody, and I'm not saying that that is a process that should not be followed, meaning I'm not encouraging for a moment that a person who's in custody should be killed. But of course, even a person who has committed a crime, he's entitled to be tried whilst following the due process, the process of law. Otherwise, the people will lose the trust and the confidence in the legal system. No sooner you lose your trust and confidence in the legal system, that will be the end of a sort of a civilized society. That is exactly what's happening. As you correctly pointed out, when you wake up in the morning, when you scroll down your mobile phone, you just want to see how many people have been now killed the last night or during that day. On daily basis, on hourly basis sometimes, we hear shootings at one place, perhaps in the north or the south or the central hills. It's happening all around the country. So despite these demands being made on regular basis, the professionals like us, the institutions like the Bar Association, I don't see any, kind of a progressive step that has been taken by the stakeholders to at least to minimize or to curb down these the crimes which are happening just on the road. It could happen inside the courthouse or the perimeters of the courts. If a witness or a accused or let's say any party to that matter, and if that person is basically gunned down in the perimeters of the courts, then what is the safety for a person? If a person is taken into custody, and recently would have seen, and it was splashed in the papers, a housemaid who was taken into custody by the police was killed in custody. And these are not things that can be condoned by any person for any reason whatsoever. So these are things which must, but should not have happened. So, but it's happening around. So that is why we thought, the Bar Association, and we decided to make certain representations to the government, including the Honorable Attorney General, and requesting them to take certain stern action against these the people who are not really enforcing the law, or either the law enforcement authorities such as the police, perhaps turning a blind eye to these people. Obviously, they must be, and we are a nation who had gone through a 30-year bloody war, and our forces were able to kind of bring the war to an end. So obviously, these are matters with the facilities they have. Perhaps they can at least, basically take these people into custody had they taken proper steps. But it seems that no proper steps are being taken by the law enforcement authorities. So that is shocking.
Well, so sometimes with the news that are coming out right now, the breakdown in governance, the issues within the governance structure of Sri Lanka are somewhat overwhelming to the general public, because while maybe you and I have studied this for quite some time, you much more longer than me, the general public really don't have too much of an understanding about the legal structure here in Sri Lanka, especially given the fact that the legal system is so complicated. It's quite understanding that people might find it overwhelming. And given the current day and age, seeking legal assistance is also not an easy task. It's quite an expensive task, if I might put it lightly. But of course, the Bar Association has several initiatives to help the general public, to provide this support to the general public, to empower the general public to assert their rights, to be protected from any infringement whatsoever, be it criminal or civil. We'll bring you more details on how the Bar Association is doing this and how you can avail yourself of these services, public services that are provided by the Bar Association after a short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Newsline live.
News First, Newsline.
Countless people are suffering due to the arid weather conditions that have swept across the island. The lack of drinking water, however, is not just a seasonal issue to many people in rural Sri Lanka. As part of the continuous efforts to provide clean drinking water to the people of Sri Lanka, Gammatha laid the foundation stone for another drinking water project in Ukulankulama, Anuradhapura. Gammatha, for the people, by the people.
News First, Newsline.
Hello there, welcome back. You're tuned into Newsline. We're in discussion with the President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, Attorney at Law, Kaushalya Nawaratne. Sir, we were speaking about the general public, their fundamental rights, and how the public can protect them. Now, one other issue, of course, with inflation now, as you see, prices of goods, prices of everything have shot up, and then also prices of services provided by professionals, be it professionals or other people who provide services, have also gone up. And then access to legal assistance, legal counsel is also quite an issue to the general public, and given the number of violations that are taking place, be it on part of the state, the law enforcement, or even during civil disputes, it's very, very hard for the general public to access the kind of legal counsel, the kind of legal assistance that would help them protect their rights. Is the Bar Association mindful of this situation? Has the Bar Association acknowledged it? And better yet, has any steps been taken to address this?
Yeah, thank you very much for asking that question, Shalan. Actually, the Bar Association, it's consisting of lawyers. Lawyers are always mingling with the general public. We are quite sensitive. Perhaps I would say, I'm so proud to say that I'm a member of this noble profession, and we always keep our feet on the ground, meaning we are quite sensitive towards the day-to-day, the changes in the society and the feeling of the people. Because our profession is a profession where we, on daily basis, hourly basis, every single minute, we deal with the life or the future of another person. So therefore, whatever the changes that are happening around in the society are something that has a direct bearing on the legal profession. So to answer to your question, if you look at the structure of the Bar Association, and we have 52 subcommittees that has been set up, and one of the most important subcommittees, the Legal Aid Subcommittee, where any person, now if you go to the Legal Aid Commission, there are certain thresholds. Like if you are a person who has an income just about an X amount of money, you are not entitled to, secure the services of the
free legal counsel.
Free legal counseling at the Legal Aid Commission. But that's a huge contrast when it comes to the Bar Association. And we, irrespective of your social standing, if we feel that there's a matter that must be taken up by the Bar Association, perhaps on a national issue, perhaps due to the lack of opportunities for the person who's seeking our support, we will come forward and take it up, and we will just discharge our duties as professionals for the benefit of that members. Because I just wanted to highlight that fact just as one thing. And then we have another committee, the Law Week Committee, where every year we dedicate whole of the week to do legal clinics all around the country. That is all 9 provinces, covering the 25 districts. Any person, even with regard to the matters which are pending in courts, of course subject to certain limitations, but we are not supposed to, no lawyers, normally we advise all the lawyers, the senior counsels, including the President's counsels, who come and basically provide these their professional advices at these clinics, not to accept any work But of course, subject to those certain limitations, we provide all legal services, all free of charge to any person who wants to come and kind of patronize and then obtain these advices from the Bar Association and its membership. And this year, we are having that program starting from the 25th of September up to 1st of October. And the main programs in Colombo, it's happening on the 28th and the 29th in the Halsdorf, Colombo 12. So we have invited all stakeholders such as the Minister of Justice, Prison Department, the schools. We are just conducting certain programs for the benefit of the school children, the government officials, Triforces, especially to the police. Especially to the police, I must emphasize that. Because we feel, unless and otherwise we educate not only the law enforcement authorities and with regard to the rights and obligation of the general public, especially the rights. And of course, people do not know, I think you took a sort of, you mentioned, you were heard to say at the commencement of the program, a lot of people, they are not aware of the rights. And therefore, you just, let it, shove it on the carpet by the rulers, and they just, govern the country at their free will. But now, in a globalized world, we are open to, now if you look at it, this is an era where you think of and you are relying on artificial intelligence and, the information technology developments. So you can't live in an isolation. And so everyone is interconnected, jurisdictions are interconnected. So if that is the era, it is, there is an obligation on our part as well as professionals to educate members, educate citizens, educate children, at least, for their, looking at their future and looking at the future of our country and what are their obligations, what are their rights, and how the rights and obligations must be exercised. And in case if there is any violation, who and what are the sort of the relief or the recourses that they can resort to, so that in order to protect their entitlements. So that is something which we will do for the whole of next week, starting from 25th up to 1st of October. At the same time, the next year we are celebrating the Bar Association is 50th year, setting up the Bar Association. And of course, if I to go to explain it, it might take a little time, but since we are to coincide with our 50th celebrations, whole of next year, starting from 1st of January to 31st of December 2024, we are going to dedicate to conduct these legal clinics for the benefit of the citizens right throughout the country and whole of the year. So that means that we thought it's our social obligation, and that will be discharged.
Throughout the year, across the country, at various different times. Isn't this overwhelming? Is this possible?
It is possible because, Shala, now we are a professional body where we have 92 branch associations in all cities, in all districts. So in all these districts, we will draw up the plan where we will conduct these programs perhaps once a month or perhaps once in 2 weeks in these districts, so that people, the citizens can come and kind of find the legal advice, or rather seek their legal advice, obtain legal advice from the professionals who are going to participate in these clinics.
So when you say obtain legal advice, is it only regarding fundamental rights violations or national issues, or is it just any issue that they face, be it civil or criminal?
Any matter they can. That's why, like I said, even the prison department, there are, if you go to the prisons, there are people who are in remand, not being able to, deposit or rather pay their fines, perhaps rupees 1,500, 2,000, 5,000 likewise. And we are talking about overcrowding of prisons. So therefore that we have got ourselves engaged with all these, the institutions, and we will provide those free services, and we will make applications and in consultation with the Honorable Attorney General to have them enlarged on bail. Likewise, these programs will run right throughout the next year. Of course, certainly, like as you said, in basically handpicked the areas, and this year program, 25th of September to 1st of October.
So in this program now, you said that at the Legal Aid Commission, of course, there is a threshold above if you have an income above that, you can't really seek services. Is there any demarcation like that?
As far as the Bar Association legal clinics are concerned, there is absolutely no demarcation as such. Any person who
With a
wishes
legal issue.
with legal issue can come and obtain whatever the advice, because we will provide advices on both criminal, civil, let's say commercial, land issue or family issue or anything. We have identified the chambers, the seniors to come and basically get themselves engaged with us. So they will provide these free professional services to general public who come and patronize these places.
So this year, of course, it's happening on the 28th and 29th, but throughout the week, next week, it will be Law Week, and on the 28th and 29th, the general public can avail them of course, these public services that the Bar Association is providing. President's Counsel Kaushalya Nawaratne, we're in the final few minutes of this show. Just a quick question. Hopefully, we can get a quick answer, but it's not one of those questions where you can give a quick answer. But let's see how this goes. There are several pieces of legislation that are, well, at least the cause for concern right now being gazetted, chief among which is the anti-terrorism bill. Now, it was gazetted back in March. They withdrew it because of the public outcry against it. Now they've brought it again. Now, in the interim, before this bill was withdrawn, the Bar Association of Sri Lanka presented the government with a report highlighting certain provisions that cannot be included in this bill and that should not be passed in a democratic society. The new bill has come out. What is the Bar Association doing now? Have they complied with it?
Certainly, we have submitted our report, as you correctly said, and it was published in the media as well. But of course, we find a new bill has now been gazetted, and we have appointed a special expert committee to study the previous one. And today we are going to refer the present gazetted bill to that committee and expecting them to submit a report on ASAP basis. So in case if we find, of course we find certain
concerning
provisions, and therefore that certainly that is a matter that will be ended up in courts, as I feel.
Well, of course, the Bar Association of Sri Lanka has stood by the people when the people needed them the most, especially during last year, the previous few years, when people's fundamental rights were being stepped on by several individuals in power. The Bar Association stepped up, appeared for the general public who were being wrongly arrested, wrongly confined, wrongly charged. They appeared in the hundreds and stood by the people. Of course, the dangers have not passed yet. Besides, one could even say that the dangers are only beginning right now, and therefore it is important that, of course, professional organizations, including the Bar Association and other professional organizations, get together if we are to come out of this rut as a country together and finally achieve what we truly can. Thank you very much, President's Counsel, I beg your pardon, Attorney at Law Kaushalya Nawaratne, for joining us on our program. Thank you very much to all our viewers out there for tuning in to another episode of Newsline. Until we meet again, take care and God bless.